So it is a very crappy day out here. Just dreary, rainy, chilly, all that good stuff. But I figured I would just go over something. What is stink water? So we started working on the stink water log experiment, a day or two ago. And I talked about the coffee beer, coffee brew experiments we did in the past. And I said it was kind of like a hybrid, between the coffee beer and like compost tea. You mix those two together. So compost tea might be, produce, your veggies, leaves, like stuff you might chop and drop. And you may add sugar and you make it ferment and filter out whatever, strain out the liquid, use the liquid to feed or put in a foliar spray or something your plants. So if you haven't watched all of my garden videos, you probably are wondering what's the specifics of this coffee beer, coffee brew. Basically, coffee brew or coffee beer is the fermentation of liquids only. Those liquids could have sugar, creamer. They could, you could basically have old orange juice, grape juice, any kind of fruit juices, old teas, old coffees, coffee from the pot, coffee from a cup you poured and that still had sugar or creamer in it. You could have cola, so sugary colas, that you didn't drink or whatever. They got stale in the 2-liter, pour it out, ferment into the bucket, or I was using originally a 50 or 55 gallon barrel, closed barrel with a bunghole on the top to access it to add, rainwater and other nutrients and all to ferment. And I had a spigot at the bottom, but not all the way to the bottom, but maybe 2 or 3 inches above the bottom. So sediment and any kind of thick stuff, sludge at the bottom, didn't stop up the spigot. Turn on the spigot, collect your stuff, dilute it, 1 to 1 or 1 to 0.5 or 1 to 3.5 ratio, depending on whatever works for you. So I took that idea and I took the idea of compost tea using leaves and more solid materials, and I combined it into a single, barrel, and just, the process is the same. You just have solids that you're trying to break down and stuff as well. So I even added milk. I think I've added old ice cream. I probably added, some cottage cheese and everything to these guys, and that might be questionable. Probably even I think I did put a little bit of cheese, old cheese in there. And whether or not that's a good idea, I don't know. And the reason why I call it stink water is because it smells like septic. And they say when you're making these things, other people make stuff that's similar. When you start smelling that septic tank type smell, that's when it's ready to use. That's when you know it's ready. So what kind of things did I put in my compost tea or stink water bucket? So leaves that, that I pick from whatever, elderberry leaves. You could do produce from the grocery store, lettuce, anything, comfrey leaves. If you're got a big amount of comfrey, that's a big thing, because people make comfrey tea, just out of comfrey leaves. And in the South, in the heat, they don't grow as fast or as much as something like Mexican tithonia, but that's something you could add there. You could do Mexican tithonia. You could do maybe on your softer perennials and stuff, like elderberry, elephant ears. But here's one of the things that I really wanted to do when I was doing this, was to get rid of some of the plant materials that I don't like. Virginia creeper is one of them. It's kin to poison oak. It kind of creeps and grows all over everything. Cherry laurel is one that I cannot stand. So you could always strip the leaves, put those in there, even though you probably don't want to put like the actual sticks and branches in there, because it probably will never break down all the way. Things like Biden's alba, before they go to seed, you might say, okay, let's get rid of these guys instead of throwing, just ripping them up and throwing them in the compost pile, where there's a high probability that some of them will root and it'll be growing there in your compost pile or wherever, where you do not want it to go. Put it in your stink water. Put it in there, ferment it, let it absorb the nutrients out of there and sort of compost or ferment down. Here's some like end of season, goldenrods. You can pull the whatever's still green off of there, the leaves and stuff, and put it in your stink water. Old oranges or whatever that fall off of the tree, and you don't want the tree underneath it to have like 1,000 seedlings pop up. Ferment it down, let it absorb those nutrients, not propagate, the seeds everywhere. And that's, here's the thing. It's an experiment for all of us. There's no set rules, I guess. If you got like all these pumpkin vines here before hard freeze or whatever, yank, 1,000, 10,000 feet of vines out. Probably no way we'd get all these vines in one little bucket, but get a little bit at a time, 10, 20 feet, 30 feet, kind of crush it up, stick it in there, see what happens. This is one of the buckets that I think my middle son JJ helped me do with. We started with potatoes and stuff like that. And you can see they're still green at the top there. Some of these weeds and plants just do not want to die in that fermenting liquid. And that's very strange. But just let them keep going. Maybe as hot water hits here and bakes this a little bit more, maybe it'll start the fermentation process a little bit heavier, and hopefully it'll kill all the things instead of rooting these vines and stuff, including, I see an orange here on the ground here. You can see that it has like a bad spot in it. So we can just throw that in one of these containers, stink water containers. And here it goes. So there is our comfrey, our one and only comfrey. I've definitely been hesitant to like pull it out and try to split it or something like that, because they stress out pretty easily. And then they look like they're dead for a while before they potentially come back. But supposedly if you leave even a little tiny strip of root there, where you pull them up from the ground or whatever, they will come back. And basically they say do not put them anywhere you don't want them to stay. So here, like I said, our weather isn't the best or whatever for them. I guess they like colder climates maybe, and they grow a lot in like cow pastures, and they just don't propagate as fast and grow as fast as the Mexican tithonia, which can get like 13, 14 foot and grow everywhere they fall and re-root. So with that said, these are very pretty plants in my opinion, and they got pretty, I believe they're purple flowers. I've seen them in other like permaculture places, and down here in Florida, they say they've never spread. So if they were in 10 different places, it's because somebody wanted them to be in 10 different places. They knew how the plant acts or reacts to propagation or whatever, and moving them from place to place. So, and there are sterile varieties, then there are ones that reseed, I believe. So I do not know what this is, but I know that people around here, if they're the ones spreading from permaculture farm to permaculture farm, then they're most likely ones that are not going to propagate from seeds. They're probably sterile. This is the Mexican tithonia perennial version or whatever. Has the yellow flowers, and the annual version has like the orange flowers. You have to kind of reseed, I guess, yourself and collect seeds and replant them. But yeah, see big old leaves, and I've seen them pretty high, maybe 14 foot high in somebody else's yard. And if they're that easy to propagate, and yeah, they will create a lot of plant material, for you to chop and drop or to make compost tea with. So if you have anything that's invasive or you consider invasive, like cherry laurels, to me they're native, but they're horrible plants because they spread through the roots, and when you chop them down, they come back and they spread all around. And some people love them. They say they don't do that for them, but my experience is it's bad. And there are tallow trees and all kinds of invasive, Boston ferns like that there. Once they hit the ground and spread everywhere, they're a mess. So that'd be a good candidate for your compost tea or whatever. You just let the fermentation process absorb those nutrients and use it for something that you want to be successful, fruits or vegetable gardening or, flowers, anything that could potentially take over your trees, your garden or whatever. Why not use it for a good purpose like that? Native or invasive or whatever. A lot of things like dandelions, they get such a bad reputation here. Biden's alba. Guess what? If they were worth money, people would be collecting them. They would not be a problem with invading our properties. There would be like, what would the term be? A negative deficit or whatever of them, because they're being used for money, being used for something. They're not, by the pound. A lot of these probably aren't worth, their weight in gold, obviously, or a lot of money, even as fertilizer. But they're worth something. They're worth something to somebody. They're worth something to this ginger plant here, right? They're worth something to that comfrey or begonia or impatiens, something. You're taking something that you don't want or don't need in a lot of cases and using that to feed the stuff that you do want. So I can't tell you how much nitrogen or percentages or anything that these guys provide. I mean, and obviously you're using different things for your compost tea or whatever that has a different level of nutrients. Each leaf, each whatever has different nutrients in it. And what their soil and fertilizer or whatever is going to be different from what you got. Experiment on. There's no rules here. There are no rules. Just experiment. See if it helps at all to do this stuff. Composting, dry composting, at least provides soil and hopefully a little bit of nutrients. Doing this other method, which is like a liquid fermentation, will provide nutrients for carbon, like, you know, dried leaves, hay, and stuff like that, like dead trees and limbs. They will all absorb that, or at least in theory, and hopefully slow release it into the ground and allow plants that are in that area to the roots to absorb the nutrients. Hey, does it work? I don't know. I hope so. It should. Why wouldn't it?